Ragnarok is right around the corner, and what better way to celebrate that than to publicly rank my least favorite to most favorite God of War games. So that's what we're going to be doing in this video. Now, I understand this is a public opinion, so if you disagree with mine, let me know in the comments down below what is your least favorite God of War game and what's your most favorite God of War game. Also, don't forget to leave the video a like and sub to the channel if you like this kind of content, but let's get into it. Now, for the sake of this video, I'm not going to be getting into the mobile or Facebook games. They're a bit so I'm going to leave them out. Let's just get into my number 7, God of War Ascension. God of War Ascension was kind of a weird one. It wasn't bad, or at least I didn't think it was bad. It's probably one of the most hated God of War games. There is kind of a cult following around it, but ask any sort of casual God of War fan and they will say that Ascension is most likely the worst one out of the series. For me, my biggest gripe in God of War Ascension was the story or lack thereof. God of War Ascension was in this really weird place where it released after the events of God of War 3, so you know, everything and everyone is dead, but they wanted to go ahead and continue the story in the Greek setting. You can't really do that because of the events of God of War 3, so there were two main options. Wedge this story somewhere in between an already existing game, or make it take place at the very beginning, keeping in mind that we had God of War 1 which kicked it off. There was another game that was a prequel to God of War 1, so if Ascension took place at the very beginning, you'd be taking place before the first game, before the prequel game, and then setting it before that. They went with that option, which means that any characters that they introduced or any storyline that they introduced couldn't really be expanded too much because of the fact that you were tied in or you were boxed into an already established story. Players knew where the story went because there were so many games that took place afterwards, which means that there was no room for evolving particular characters. You couldn't introduce characters that had a long-lasting impact on the narrative or the lore of the games, which just made the game overall feel kind of unnecessary. They also tried to put in this multiplayer mechanic. It was fun. I'll give them that. It was fun, but it was weird. I don't look at God of War and go, you know what's missing? Multiplayer. But in this multiplayer, you get to choose your allegiance between Zeus, Ares, Poseidon, or Hades, and based on who you pick and who you have your allegiance to, you will get certain new customization options for your gladiator, basically the person you'll be playing in the multiplayer game. And then you'll be put into an 8-player objective-based combat arena. It was fun, as I said, weird, yes, but fun. But overall, Ascension was just feeling like the weakest, most unnecessary game in this list that I have. Moving on to number 6, Chains of Olympus. The first of 2 PSP games that would expand the lore within God of War franchise, Chains of Olympus, just like Ascension, was set before the events of the first God of War game. And oh boy, this game has one of the most emotional scenes. If you know, you know. Oh my god, for a PSP game, this one is not to be missed. Now, kind of like Ascension, this story, it kind of felt like a bit more of a padding or a filler in a sense, rather than something that impacts the whole wider narrative or the lore of the franchise. Basically, in this game, the gods have fallen into a deep slumber, and it's up to Kratos to find out how and why this came to be, and obviously fix it. The game story is a little weaker, however, it is stronger than Ascension, which is why I've put it higher on this list. Now, there's nothing outrightly wrong with this game, I would say. The combat was really quick, it's fast, which is what God of War at the time was known for. The story was just on the weaker side. It's kind of a, here's a quick problem, everyone's asleep, find out why. Here's the solution, here's a super sad ending, game finished, now we can move into the lore that we know with the previous games. Nothing wrong with that at all, it just, when compared to other games, it just felt more of a padding or a filler type game, rather than it being a huge or a substantial part of the lore itself. Moving on to my number 5, which is Ghost of Sparta. Now, this is the second PSP game to release in the God of War franchise, and oh my god. At this point, if you've played all other games and you play Ghost of Sparta, you will feel for Kratos so much. At every single point in every other game, including this one especially, he just gets absolutely annihilated when it comes to family dramas. He just cannot catch a break. In this game, it's revealed that Kratos has a brother whom he was separated from at a very young age. I won't tell you why. However, in the pursuit to find out more about his brother and seeking information from his mum, she actually turns into a beast that he himself must fight. The family turmoil in this game is just so gripping. Being forced to fight your mum, the mystery for Kratos trying to figure out who his real father is, there was an impactful choice to reveal Kratos' brother, and the emotional pulling that results from that. Again, it is just a PSP game, but it really felt like it had a larger impact on the overall story of the franchise and who we know Kratos to be. It really fleshed out a lot of the characters, and you can really empathize with Kratos even if you haven't really done so by this point. After playing this game, you really get a feeling, especially when playing the other games, that Kratos is just being kicked around. Everything bad happening to him in his life has something to do with the gods trying to hold him back, and you really start, or at least for me, I really started to see a shift where he went full rage mode. He has so much bloodlust for the gods, and is even deemed as death, destroyer of worlds in this game. It's just another display of great storytelling, fleshing out a rich franchise and introducing an array of very interesting characters, whilst also keeping to the true and tried and proven combat mechanics, level designs, and epic scale that the franchise is known for. Again, all of this is on the PSP handheld device, which was absolutely crazy for the time. Moving into my number 4 is God of War 1 for the PS2. Now this is where it all started. First releasing in 2005, this game would go on to blow my 14-year-old Pixel's mind. At this point, I played a lot of Need for Speed, The Simpsons Hit and Run, Spider-Man 2, but had never come across a game like God of War before. I remember being so engrossed by the mythology of this game, the opening battle with the Hydra, and truly feeling like I was embarking on an epic telling of a plagued, cursed man who would eventually become the next God of War. This game made me realize that games can quite literally be a vehicle for masterful storytelling, a huge step in the right direction that would see games be respected as another medium rather than just simply dismissed as a child's plaything. The game introduces you to a bloodthirsty Kratos who is on death's door, and with a simple plea for the then God of War Ares, Kratos agreed to serve under Ares should he and his men survive the war that they're in. Under the bidding of Ares, Kratos led an attack on the village. However, unbeknownst to Kratos, Ares had secretly moved his wife and child into this village. Through his bloodlust and tunnel vision, Kratos accidentally killed his own wife and child. Now, if that wasn't sad enough, the oracle that was living in that village that Kratos led the attack on cursed Kratos even more by getting the ashes of his dead wife and child and attaching that to his skin. That's why Kratos' skin is so white. It's not just his complexion, it's the ashes of his child and his wife that he murdered. Every time he looks down at his skin, it is a constant reminder of the deeds that he has done. That to me was just so impactful, and it just hooked me right into this game. And all of this took place at the beginning of the game. There was such a rich presence within this game in terms of its unique and imaginative level design, fantastic character designs, and voice acting. It truly was a masterclass and a complete standout from other games at its time, and would cement my passion not only within this franchise, but a wider interest in Greek mythology as a whole. Moving on to my number 3 is God of War 2 for the PS2. Now I won't spend much time on this because whatever positives I just raised in God of War 1 are here in God of War 2, but as the sequel should, it's all improved. Everything was just on a much larger scale. Kratos is now the new God of War. He refuses to align with the gods, and you really start to see the alliance building with him and the Titans to take down the gods. You can see the hatred fester. There are twists and turns, even time travel, and ends on one of the most impactful cliffhangers I have ever seen. Quite literally a cliffhanger. You are on Gaia, a Titan who's hanging off a cliff. Cliffhanger hanging off a cliff, yeah, whatever. The graphics were also greatly improved, the levels felt so much larger in their scale, the mechanics in the combat were really tightened up, and this is what every sequel needed to be. It takes what's good about the first, then expands and improves upon them to make them incredible. Alright, we're down to the pointy end now. We have God of War 3 left and God of War 2018. Now, whatever I pick, please don't go sicko mode, goblin mode in the comments. We are all entitled to our own opinion. However, my number 2 spot goes to God of War 2018. Let me explain. This game is a complete marvel. It's a true testament to what can result if a game developer is left alone, is trusted, and is focused on releasing the best possible game. God of War 2018 acted as a pivot for the entire God of War franchise. Mainly because every Greek god and every living thing in that setting is now dead. But it also gave us a very different Kratos. A Kratos that was clearly over his past life, a life that he was so desperately trying to escape. However, when you make splashes as large as Kratos, you're never really too far away from trouble. Now, instead of taking place in the Greek mythology setting, as I said before, because everything is dead, this takes place in a Roman setting. It was a complete revitalization of the franchise, some saying that this is what the franchise actually needed. By this point, we've had so many games in the Greek setting, and basically everything is dead, so there was not much left to explore in this lore, so they had to change it up. However, they didn't only change the setting in God of War, they actually changed the entire gameplay mechanic of what God of War will now be known as. The combat feels far more focused and deliberate. Kratos himself feels so much heavier, so players must be quite calculated in their approach. You can't really just hack and slash your way out of fights anymore. There's a big focus on timing, blocking, parrying, weapons and ability upgrades to change your combat style. It's so much more involved. Some like this new layer of complexity, others felt like it was an unwanted departure from the more simplistic way of the franchise. For me personally, although I did like the simplicity of the other God of War games, I do understand and recognize that something needed to change, and I'm always open and welcoming of changes like this. You get a much greater sense of control and actual choice as to how your Kratos plays. Again, this change all comes down to your personal preference. Do you like the more agile hack and slash Kratos, or do you like the more rigid, controlled, calculated Kratos? The game implemented a feature where the camera essentially sticks to Kratos throughout the entire game and rarely pans out. So if you play without dying, like me, I never die in games, it actually plays out as one single shot, and it truly increased the feeling of immersion. However, the trade-off is that you don't really get too many of those moments where the camera pans back to show how small you are or give you a sense of scale to the massive things around you. Now, those moments occur a lot less in this game, and I absolutely love those moments in the previous God of War, so for me, the trade-off was it worth it? It increased my immersion. I was already very immersed in the God of War franchise anyway, so I would prefer that they did have the cuts, I know, controversial, in favor of them actually being able to pull out and showing us the sheer scale of where we are and how small we are compared to what we're coming up against. It's a visual style that I think the franchise is very famous for, and I really just kind of missed it in this game. Now, throughout your journey and your mission to spread Kratos' second wife's ashes at the highest peak in the 9 realms, you'll come across many unsavory characters and creatures, most of whom have heard of or take issue with Kratos. This game really matured what we now know God of War to be. It set entirely new standards for an already proven franchise and elevated it beyond anyone's belief. And I think it's even to a point now where the game and the franchise has never been so popular. But why did this get number 2 and God of War 3 got my number 1? So for me, God of War 3 was the final game, the complete culmination of the events preceding, leading to one large, epic conclusion. This was your chance to finally kill the gods that have been plaguing you across all of the 6 games that came before it, spanning half a decade. It was your opportunity to finally put an end to everything and to give Kratos the ending he deserved, and to have everything seen through to his gripping and satisfying conclusion. To me, God of War 3 just has so much more scale and verticality in its level designs, which made them a lot more interesting to have combat in. The boss encounters, especially the ones when you're going up against the gods, were also just so much more memorable, and at least to me, has never been matched in any other God of War game. There was a lot more verticality shifts, boss fights took place on different planes of land, and the camera would constantly zoom out to give you a huge sense of scale. I feel like this sense was missing in 2018's God of War because the camera, I guess as a trade-off, was always stuck over the shoulder of Kratos, so you couldn't really get that scale because they went for that one-shot technique. We're rarely given moments to show how grand and massive certain environments are, but in God of War 3, it's a constant occurrence. You're constantly shown how small you are when scaled up to different gods or titans. Combat can be bloody and gruesome when fighting these creatures and even the gods with insane finisher moves, and all of it takes place in different levels of verticality rather than being on one level of land. Now, the variety of the environments and the landscapes was also a huge strength of God of War 3, one which I felt was missing in God of War 2018. There are some instances in God of War 3 that you're riding on the back of a Titan, and then there's also instances where you're inside the Titan and you can see the beating heart of the Titan. It was just amazing to see how groundbreaking and innovative and imaginative the game and its level designs are, with constantly shifting level designs as well as you work through puzzles. The dynamically shifting angles truly were masterfully implemented, and through the use of scale and the variety of the environments, this game conveyed some of the most memorable moments in gaming history. I can't recall moments like this in God of War 2018, but these moments are plentiful in God of War 3. Climbing on Gaia's back as you ascend Mount Olympus to finally kill the gods, and the camera zooms out to show you the sheer magnitude of events is ingrained in my brain. Walking through the underworld as you see the souls of the damned fall around you, there are just so many examples like this where the level design is so much more interesting and interactive. Now, what do I mean by interactive? Well, every time you kill a god, there is a consequence, a direct consequence to your actions. You kill Poseidon and the sea levels rise and a giant tidal wave engulfs all of Greece. Kill Helios, the god of the sun, and Greece becomes engulfed in dark clouds that block out the sun and provides never-ending rain. Kill Hera and all the plants wither. You see a direct impact of your actions take place in the world around you, and you feel the weight and the gravity and the very real consequences. Now, as I said before, God of War 3, God of War 2018, it essentially boils down to what style of Kratos and God of War games do you prefer. Do you like the older style where it's more hack and slash, or do you like this new pivoted reimagined version? For someone like me who grew up on the old God of War games, my bias is to the older versions that I became accustomed to. It also helps out that I have a huge liking to Greek mythology, far more than Roman, so for me there was just always more of a personal investment into the character in the old God of War games. The Kratos in God of War 3 feels more agile, quicker, and a little more hack and slash, which is a personal preference to me. It's a feeling of Kratos I'm used to, and the game will always hold that special place for me. I love the simplicity of the weapon and upgrading mechanics. At its essence, it was just such an indulgent style of game for me. It was over the top, there was a charm to it. A charm that I feel was somewhat lost when they went to a more realistic approach in the 2018 game. It established its own charm, but I really just had a soft spot for the old God of War games. Now, that's not to say that God of War 2018 is a weaker game. No, mechanically on all fronts, it's probably the better game. However, gun to head, I would pick God of War 3 every time. But guys, that's my ranking for all of the God of War games currently out. I'm very much looking forward to Ragnarok, but let me know in the comments down below. What is your least favorite God of War game? What is your most favorite God of War game? Do you disagree or agree with my list? Do you think I'm an idiot for how I arranged my list? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. I want to thank the Ko-fi supporters who are on screen now. If you want to get these videos early, go ahead and become a supporter, and thank you so much for going above and beyond with your support. Again, if you like the video, please go ahead and leave it a like, sub to the channel, and I will see you in the next one.